Welcome to the True Man Podcast. This is an invitation to radical reconstruction of a man's masculine heart and soul in a place of safe community where we dare to ask questions deep seated inside a man and explore ways to help you become a better man, a better son, a better dad, and a better spouse, and just an well rounded dude because we don't have enough of those in the world. So, welcome. Glad to have you into the True Man Podcast. And I hope you're enjoying this wonderful fall weather that we've been having. Always such a great time of year. You really get to see nature change. I love the smell of those fall fires and the leaves burning and that nip in the air. Just such a great time of year. But before I dive in here, I just want to encourage you to check out my website, truemanlifecoaching.com. You can do multiple things on that site. One, you can check out my book, True Man, True Ways, a roadmap of discovery to the masculine heart. You can order that for yourself, for your friend, or grab it for your men's small group. Do it as a self-study. Also, you can forward your podcast to your friends, even on your phone right now. If you want to know somebody who's looking for a good podcast, just dial it up and forward this thing on. And don't forget to check out my speaker page on my website. I am available for your next event to speak, hold a retreat online or in person, maybe even do a workshop. Just schedule time with me to learn more. So let's kick off today's show and talk about how you can be the link that begins leaving a legacy for your family. Now, there's a hard truth, I think, that most men spend a lifetime running from sometimes, hoping to mask our pain. But here's the thing. You can't build a new future for yourself, for your children, for your family, if you don't stop repeating the past. Now, many of us carry the weight of what came before us, the patterns, the pain, the silence, the dysfunction of things that happened in our life. Maybe your dad wasn't there. Maybe your dad was there. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe you grew up in a house full of chaos, addiction, or anger. Or maybe you just grew up in a place where emotions weren't expressed, faith wasn't talked about, and love had conditions. Does any of that sound familiar to you? Have you experienced that? Whatever it was, you can feel it, right? You see it in how you react when life hits you hard, if you're being honest with yourself. You see it when your marriage hits conflict. You see it when you're in your kids, when they mirror back your tone, your attitude, your habits. Have you experienced that? And if we're being honest, you sometimes hear that voice in your head, don't you? Maybe you thought to yourself, am I just turning in to my old man? Well, the truth is, you don't have to if you don't want to, but you will unless you make the decision to stop, confront what's gone on in your past, and build something better. That's what this talk is really about today. It's about being the man who breaks the cycle of those negative behaviors, those negative things, those negative voices, who stops repeating what destroyed generations before him and starts building what generations will look like after you. The things that your family will thank you for. So we live in a culture that glorifies speed, noise, and distraction, don't we? Are you experiencing that in your everyday life? I know I am. Everything around you screams, go faster, do more, get yours. But a legacy really isn't built in the rush of everything going on around us. It's built, believe it or not, in the stillness. And a lot of us have a hard time getting there. In the quiet places where you actually hear God's voice. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 and 2 says, be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. And Paul continues later in verse 15, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Now, Paul wasn't calling men to live faster. He was calling them to live wiser, to walk in love, walk in light, and walk in wisdom. You can't walk in wisdom when you're sprinting through life on autopilot. You can't walk in love when your heart's too busy chasing approval or achievement. Having all those cars in your driveway, a bigger house than your neighbor, a faster boat than the other guy on the lake. Hard to do this when you're chasing approval all the time. And you can't walk in light if you're constantly living in the shadows of your past. If you want to build a legacy, you've got to slow down long enough to listen. You've got to unplug from the noise and ask yourself hard questions like, what patterns am I repeating? What pain am I passing down? What story will my children tell because of the man I choose to be today? Legacy begins with awareness, and awareness requires stillness. So let me tell you a story. Years ago, I coached a man named Josh. On the outside, he had it all together. A lot of us try to look that way. A solid job, nice house, good family, but underneath, he was running on fumes. His dad had been distant and hard, the kind of man who never said, I love you, but expected perfection. And Josh swore he'd never be like that. But one night he came home from work and his young son had accidentally broke a lamp. Now, Josh exploded, yelled, slammed the door, and his wife grabbed the kids and left that night. Now, when I sat across from him a few days later, he broke down and said, I became the very man I swore I'd never be. Have you ever experienced that? And that's how it happens sometimes. Not overnight, slowly, silently. When we never stop to face the pain that we've inherited, we eventually pass it on. We just replicate the behaviors that we've seen, that we've learned. Some of these camp out in our unconscious mind. We don't intend for them to happen. They just happen to be in our unconscious mind. And when something of stress comes out, we just, boom, there it is. These are the behaviors we don't always confront, and they become patterns that we repeat. And the patterns that we repeat, well, they become the legacy that we leave. And for Josh, that moment became a turning point. He didn't try to justify it. He owned it, right? You can't play the victim card here. If you've done something negative, you've got to own it. He started counseling. He began journaling and praying daily. And most importantly, he started showing his kids a different kind of strength. He told them that he was sorry. He started saying, I love you. And he learned to pause before reacting. So critically important. And he became the man he needed growing up. And that's what breaking a generational pattern looks like. Now, breaking generational cycles isn't about trying harder. It's about surrendering deeper. You see, you can't fix what spiritual, through spiritual human effort alone. The patterns that we battle, the anger, the pride, the addiction, the avoidance, the control, are not psychological. They're spiritual strongholds that require spiritual weapons. We've got to lean in to Christ. And Ephesians 6, chapter 12 reminds us, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, the powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Now, if you want to build a new legacy, You've got to fight a different kind of battle. You got to know what kind of war you're in. And that means getting in the world. Yes, you're going to have to dust off that Bible. The truth exposes lies. The Bible isn't just advice, it's armor, man. Getting honest. You can't heal what you hide. Name your pattern and bring it into the light. Getting accountable. You weren't meant to do this alone. Put good men around you. Learn from them. Study with them. And be present. Stay where your feet are. Legacy isn't built in someday. It's built in today. Start today. Well, they call it today. Just be present and take things in small bite-sized chunks. You can't build a true man legacy if your mind's in tomorrow and your heart's trapped in yesterday. It just does not work. I have yet to meet anybody that said it did. And one of the most dangerous traps that men fall into, right? Haven't we all been there? Control. The belief that if we just hold everything together, everything will be okay. We try to control outcomes. We try to control people. We try to control appearances. And in doing so, we often lose what matters most. But control is a cheap substitute for faith. It gives the illusion of security, keeping you disconnected from God's power. Have you felt that disconnectedness in your life? I know I've experienced it. You know, walking in wisdom, as Paul teaches us, means letting go of control and learning to trust again. Trusting God's timing, trusting his correction, trusting in his ability to heal what you can't. Because legacy isn't about building bigger. It's about building better. It's about letting go of old tools, anger, pride, and denial, and picking up the new ones that actually build something eternal: faith, humility, forgiveness. You see, control screams, I got this. Faith whispers, God, I trust you. Only one of those builds a legacy that lasts. And you can't change what you don't recognize. So here's where the work really starts. Identifying the generational patterns that may be running quietly in your life. So ask yourself these questions. When I'm under stress, what version of me shows up? Do I isolate, lash out, overwork, or shut down? Those behaviors usually trace back to a modeled behavior. How do I handle family conflict when things go sideways or wrong? Do I yell? Do I go silent? Do I pretend nothing happened? You may be coping with the same playbook you learned from. Maybe it's time for a new playbook. Here's another question. What did I learn about love and forgiveness? Now, were apologies common while you were growing up, or was pride the norm? Yet another question. What do I want my kids to say about me one day? Now, if the answer does not align with your current actions, that's where change begins. So the key is not to shame yourself. That will do absolutely no good. It's to gain clarity, because you can't break what you won't face. You can't build new until you demolish the old. And the Holy Spirit doesn't reveal to condemn. He reveals to restore. Now, once you've identified the broken patterns, it's really time to replace them with godly ones, isn't it? You can't just remove sin. You have to replace it with strength. So here's how to start building a new legacy for your family. Speak blessing, not curse, right? Every day, speak life over your wife and your children. Words create identity. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death." Use yours to give life. 2, model forgiveness. Don't just preach grace, live it. Let your kids see you forgive others quickly. Let them see you repent. Show them that true strength is found in humility. 3, establish family rhythms. Create weekly habits, prayer nights, dinners, church together. Legacy isn't built on grand gestures, it's formed in consistency. I got to say, family dinners every night are going to make a huge difference in your life. Give it a shot. 4, build memories, not monuments. Your family doesn't need to inherit your possessions, they need to inherit your presence. And of course, finally, pray together. Nothing unites a family like prayer. Even if it feels awkward at first, it plants seeds that will outlive you. Now, your goal here is not perfection. None of us can achieve it. The goal is progress, moving forward, just being in action. Every step you take toward God is a step away from the patterns that have held you back. Now, Paul's letter to Ephesians is a great blueprint for every man trying to lead his family in a world of noise. He gives 3 commands that form the backbone of, let's call it, the true man legacy today. And I love these. I've already mentioned them once, so let's talk a little bit more about them. Walk in love. Love isn't soft, it's sacrificial. It means leading with compassion, even when your pride screams otherwise. Your family learns what love looks like by how you show it. Walk in light. Light exposes what's hidden. It brings clarity, honesty, and freedom. And as a leader of your family, you don't pretend everything is fine. It doesn't work. Oh, and by the way, everyone knows it's not anyway. But you bring these things into the light so that healing can begin. And walk in wisdom. Wisdom is not the ability to slow down and see things from God's perspective. It's knowing when to speak and when to listen. Let me go back and rephrase that. Wisdom is the ability, if I didn't say that right before, wisdom is the ability to slow down and see things from God's perspective. It's knowing when to speak and when to listen. It's choosing peace over your ego and purpose over impulse. And when a man walks in love, light, and wisdom, he becomes unshakable. He builds a foundation that storms can't destroy. That's the kind of man the world needs. That's the kind of man your family deserves. Wouldn't you agree? And that's the kind of man that God is calling you into. Now, SHIFT, this is an acronym that I'm using in my latest signature talk. SHIFT is stabilize, honor, ignite, focus, and trust. And at some point, every man faces a decision or a shift. Stay comfortable in what's familiar or step into what's eternal. Now you can keep repeating what you've seen, or you can start modeling what's possible. You can keep chasing control, or you can start walking in faith. You can keep building on sand, or you can start building on stone. And when you decide to build a legacy that honors God, you shift the entire direction of your family tree. You become the man who says, the pain stops with me, the blessings begin with me. Isn't that what you want to leave behind? Your children and your grandchildren may never fully understand the battles that you fought to give them peace, but they will live in the victory you secured through your obedience. So how do you start? How do you start this? Well, you start today. Well, they call it today. Here's your action plan for building a legacy worth living. Reflect. Identify the broken patterns that have followed your family line. Write them down, name them, journal this, and get it down on paper. Repent, confess where you've contributed to them, and don't justify, just own it and move on. Forgive yourself. Renew, commit to God's process of transformation, daily time in the Word, prayer, and brotherhood. And rebuild. Live intentionally, lead with purpose, teach your children truth through action, and release. Let go of control. Yes, it is incredibly difficult to do, but let God do the work in you that you could never do on your own. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be willing to go first. You see, legacy isn't what you leave behind someday. Legacy is what you live out right now. And the world is full of noise, like I started with, but your family doesn't need another echo. They need a voice. They need your example. They need your presence. They need your courage to stand in the gap and say, this ends with me. So slow down and listen to God. Walk in love. Walk in light. Walk in wisdom. Because the legacy you build today will become the foundation your family stands on tomorrow. Don't let dysfunction write your story. Let faith rewrite it. And be the first link in that new legacy. And let the legacy start right now. And if you want to learn how to start building your legacy, and if you'd like to talk further about this particular topic, just reach out to me at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. You can also find my calendar on my website. Let's connect for that free initial call. Well, I hope this podcast gets you thinking about how you can better your best and start living the life that you were meant to live and lead your family in a godly way so that you can start leaving the legacy that you want to live. Now, if this podcast inspired you, please forward it on to a buddy or a friend. Help me grow the True Man community. And until next week, God bless you and your family. And I hope that in some really great way that this podcast will help you go out and leave the legacy that you want to leave. Now go out and make this your very, very best day ever.